Good evening, hello, and welcome to today's lesson. I am your teacher, Mr. Kambul, and in our quest to learn access based on the WAS syllabus, today's lesson will take us to relationship in MS Access. I know when you see relationship, you'll be asking yourself, what does relationship have to do with MS Access? Now, the relationship we are talking about in MS Access does not have to do with your relationship, the relationship between a mother and the child, or a father and the child, or between siblings, or siblings, etc., etc. No, here we are talking about relationship between tables. Now, in Access, we create tables so that we can be able to enter our fields, and then all these tables are related. That's why we call it a database. Now, the reason why we make a relationship is so that we can have connection between two or more tables. And this connection is going to be based on what we call a common field. Now, today's lesson, we're going to learn and understand what a relationship is in database. Then I will explain in detail what is primary key and what is foreign key. Then we are going to learn how to create a relationship. And the relationship we are going to focus on for today is a one to many relationship. Then we are going to learn what we call enforce referential integrity. This is very important when creating a relationship. Then we are going to learn how to use relationship so that our data can be managed properly. Now, before we start, you need to understand what a relationship is. As I said earlier, relationship easily talks about the connection between two or more tables. And these two or more tables have to be connected based on a common field. And this common field, one of them is going to be the primary key, and the other one is going to be the foreign key. We will see already what we call a primary key and then what is a foreign key. We know that a primary key from our previous lessons just refers to any unique identifier that we have. That is what a primary key is. Now, we create relationship between tables so that we can reduce the repetition of data. So that if I have a student here and then I want to input data in another place, I cannot input that same student details again and again and again. No. When we create a relationship and we enforce our data integrity, the moment we enter data once, we cannot get a duplicate of that data anymore. So this one tends to increase the accuracy in our data. And then another reason why we create these relationships is so that we can be able to maintain our data integrity. What we simply mean by enforcing or maintaining our data integrity is so that if, let's say for example, we have the students in the student table. So we have students there in that student table. Those students can be enrolled to many subjects because in schools, one student can do different subjects. So let's say, for example, student X can be able to take maths, English language, civic education, ICT, and other different subjects. Another student Y can also take these different subjects. Now, these ways in which they are mapped, that is what we call a one to many. One student maps to many subjects. And there are different kinds of relationships that we can have. One of the relationships that we can have is that one to many relationship. We can also have what we call a many to many relationship. We can also have what we call a many to one relationship, and we can also have what we call a one to one relationship. So all these are different kinds of relationships that you can have. And relationships are very important in a database because data integrity is something that is very vital to make sure that your data is authentic and to reduce repetition. Now, as I was saying, we need to understand some very key terms before we are able to create our relationship. One of those key terms that we need to understand that we have already come across before is what we call a primary key. You still remember the definition for primary key? Primary key simply refers to any unique identifier. You see this keyword, unique identifier, something that identifies a record in a table uniquely. And we talked about what primary keys can be. So different students can have the same surname, in fact, the same name. But then, if we are talking about the school, for example, the student ID, your index numbers, those are the things that make it to be different. So those unique identifier that makes a student to be unique, that makes a record to be unique, for it to be different from all other records, that's what we refer to as our primary key. Now, a foreign key is a primary key in another table. So let's say, for example, we have our class table, and our student table. In our class table, we will have their student ID as one of our fields. And also in our student table, we are having also our student ID as one of our fields. Now, let me show you an example here. Now, if you look at our screen, you can see if we come to student, the fields that we have student ID, first name, last name, and so on and so forth. If we also come to enrollment, we also see the same student ID here. So student ID can be found here, and student ID can also be found in enrollment, even though there is an enrollment ID. This student ID in the student table, this one here is the primary key, is what will uniquely identify each of the students. The student ID that we have in our enrollment table, that is what we call a foreign key, because this student ID here is a primary key in this student table. So when we have a primary key in another table, that is what we refer to as a foreign key. You can also see, if we come to subject, we have also subject ID, but when we come to enrollment also, we have subject ID. So meaning in subjects, subject ID here is a primary key, but in enrollment, subject ID here is a foreign key, because this subject ID is a primary key in another table. That is what we refer to as foreign key. Now, apart from foreign key, we also have what we call referential integrity. Now, referential integrity maintains consistency between tables. So, for example, you cannot assign a subject to a student who does not exist in that student table. So, if I have, let's say, for example, my student table, I'll have my students there, student X, student Y, student Z, etc., etc. Now, in my subject table, I also have their student ID as a foreign key. I cannot assign a subject to any student that is not in that student table. So that is what we call referential integrity. That referential integrity helps us to ensure that there is consistency across our table, all our tables that are related. Then we also have our one to many relationship. We say one record over here maps to many records on that other end. one student can take many subjects. One teacher can teach many subjects. That is what we call one to many. So let us understand these key terms, because when we now come to our database now, we are going to see all these things and I'll be mentioning these terms. Now, let's get to our access and start to create relationships. Do not forget to like, subscribe, and if you have questions, comment your questions and I will respond to them in the next video. Also, do not forget to share it to students that are in other schools so that learning can take place, so that they can also benefit as you are benefiting. Now we are at our access table. So this is our database. Remember, we created all these fields. We are working with that same file. If you are still following, we are working with the same file. We created these tables already, and now we want to create relationship. To create a relationship, we need to first come to what we call our database tools. So this ribbon that we have up here, database tools, we click on that one. When we click on that one, we have different things here. We have compact and repair database, visual basic, run macro, relationship, object dependencies, and so on and so forth. What we are interested in are relationships. So we are interested in relationships. So I will click on relationships. And when I click on relationships, it is now telling me to add the tables that I want to create relationships between. So I'm going to add all these tables. To add the tables, I'll just double click and then you see it is added. Or you can just click on the table here and then you click on add. So you see another one is added. I'm going to add all my 5 tables. So I'll also add the students, I'll also add the subjects, and I'll also add the teachers. After adding all these 5, you can see them. I've added all these 5 tables. After adding all these 5, I am now going to close this pop-up window. Now, when I close my pop-up window, you can see all my tables are here. If I want, I can take this, I drag it down here. If I want, I can take this, move it, just press it down and then you drag. You can move all these tables around so that you can be able to create your relationship easily. Now, what do I need to create a relationship between or among? Now you can clearly see here all these first ones. Under classes table, we have our class ID. Under enrollment table, our enrollment ID is our primary key. Under the student table, our student ID is our primary key. Under subject table, subject ID is our primary key. Under teachers table, teacher ID is our primary key. We are going to be mapping or creating the relationship between a foreign key and a primary key. Now let's take a look at this one. For enrollment, inside enrollment, we have 2 things there. We have student ID. So I'm going to click on my student ID here under my student and then drag it to my enrollment table. So you can see I have a pop-up that comes up like this. Wherein from my student table, what am I mapping? I'm mapping my student ID. If I want to change, I have other things here. Click on the drop down. You have options. And then where am I mapping? My enrollment. So you see related table or query. My enrollment, I am mapping it also to the foreign key, that is student ID. Then I will click on enforce referential integrity. Don't forget, if you don't enforce your referential integrity, then that means that there can be duplication of data. To prevent that duplication of data, we click on enforce referential integrity. Now, after doing that one, The next thing that I am going to do now is just click on create. So it gives me a pop-up. Now, before we create, let's look at, you see, we have enforced, and then our relationship type. Can you see down here? It is saying one to many. So we are creating a one to many relationship. Then now we are going to now click on our create. So you can see when we click on create, we instantly have a relationship now have been created between the student and the enrollment. You can see on this side you have one, and on this side you have infinity. What this simply means is one to many. We can create another relationship again. We can see here that subject and subject ID is here. So I can take subject ID, hold and drag, and come to the subject ID that is in enrollment. Leave it. Then I have my pop-up table. Click on enforce referential integrity. So you can see already the table, subject ID, here also subject ID. Then I will click on create. When I do that, you see another relationship has been created. And I can create also another one here. Can you see there is another foreign key here also? Subject ID and subject ID. I can hold and then drag and then drop it, that one here, there also. So between the subject, enforce my referential integrity, and then click on create. What else again can I create? I think I have class ID here. So between class and class ID, you can see I can drag and hold. So I can hold, drag, come up to here, and then I then enforce my referential integrity and then click on create. So you can see I have all these relationships. All these relationships, I can arrange them how I want so that they look very nice. Then I can save. Don't forget to save. Control S. Save my relationships. And then I can close my relationships. If I want to see my relationship again, I come to database tools, then I click on relationship. It shows me all the relationships that I have. Now, one thing you are supposed to note, always take note. Our student ID that we have here in our student table, this one is set to auto number. So meaning that in my enrollment, my student ID, my data type, I have to make sure that it is also set to number, because you can only map or create a relationship between a number and a number, a text and a text. So in this case, if my data was not at number, I will change it to number. If my data was at short text, I will change it to number. So maybe you may be getting an error message like we were getting before. All you need to do is just come to your data type, and then if you look at the foreign keys, you have to change those foreign keys now to number. So when you change the foreign keys to number, then you'll be able to create your relationship. No need to panic. So we have created our relationship. Now let us test entering data. So we are now going to test entering data and then see what we have. Now let us test our relationship. So in our student table, the only student we have here has an ID of 6. Let's call this one X. Call this X-Man, X-Man, X-Man Super. And X-Man Super, the gender for X-Man Super is a male, was born on this day, and the class ID for X-Man Super, I don't think we need to enter that one. We can save, enter a new student, call this one Y woman. So let's call this one Y woman, Y woman, uh, let's say Y woman super. These are brothers and sisters. Y woman super is a female, and Y woman super was born on the 9th of June. And then the phone number of Y woman super is going to be 222 4444. That's the phone number of Y man super. So we have that. You can see if we are adding, say you cannot add or change a record because a related record is required in the table classes. So this is what data integrity does. If I want to add any new thing, as long as it's not something that is captured in the related database, it's going to be an issue. Now we can see how data integrity works. So let us look. I've added some data in so that we look at our data integrity. In our classes table, I added class ID. Grade 1 is going to be 1, grade 2 will be 2, grade 3 will be 3, and the year group for grade 1, let's say that is 7, year group for grade 2, let's say that is 8, year group for grade 3, let's say that one is 9, and then so on and so forth. Then our enrollment, we already have these ones here, so we can just reference our student ID and then the subject ID of that student, and this one was set to default. So if we want to get another new student, we can get student ID. We have, I think, two students with their ID 6 and ID 7. So I can put student ID 7. Let's see what is going to happen. So you can see if it's not, I have to put subject ID. Let's say subject ID is 2. Then it will now work. Let's say, for example, I put student ID, and my student ID, I say that one is 9. And then I come down. You can see I have this pop up always because that student ID 9 is not in my student. There is no student that has the ID 9. So since there is no student that has the ID 9, it simply means that this record cannot be inputted. So the only thing that I can do is put in records for students that are existing in my table. If I now come here and I put another student, let me just put one here. The last name, put that there, the gender, get that one as male, get the date of birth as the 5th. Our class ID, let's give this one's class ID to be 2. Then we don't need to put that one. So we have a student that is 8. If I come to my enrollment and then I now click on, let's say here, change this to 8, you can see it work. No error message. This is what your enforcing data integrity does. It allows users to not get any kind of record that is not in our database. So whatever is here is what will be filled. If it's not here, it cannot be enrolled. So if our student is not here, meaning if the student is not registered, then that student cannot be enrolled. And for that student to be enrolled, that student must have a student ID, and the subject ID also must be known. So when it also comes to subject ID, we created our subject. Maths is 1, English is 2, let's say ICT can be 3, and then so on and so forth. So when we come to teachers, we have to give teachers always their subject ID. Teacher X, which is the last name is man. That one, the subject ID is 1, which means that teacher X is teaching which subject? He is teaching maths. If I do another one again for teacher Y, you will see that teacher Y, let's give it a, so let's say teacher Y is teaching 3. That means teacher Y is teaching ICT. So this is how it works. That's why we have our data integrity. We have to always enforce our data integrity. So to recap, if you want to create a relationship, just go to your database tools. When you go to database tools, click on relationship, then you can drag and then put it that end. Remember, your foreign key and your primary key, they must be of the same data type. So if your primary key is on auto number, your foreign key must be on number. If your primary key that you are linking here is, let's say, text, then the foreign key should also be text. They have to be of the same data type. Today we have seen how to create a relationship. Tomorrow we will look at how to create a form. So all this way that we are entering our data is very tedious to enter data this way. So we are going to learn how to enter data in a very simple way. But I will encourage you to practice. Create your own relationship between your tables. When you create your relationship between your tables, don't forget that they must be of the same data type. If that one is auto number, that one has to be number. The foreign key has to be number. And then enjoy doing ICT. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and then share to other students. And if you have question, comment. If you have queries, comment, and I will try my best to reply to all your questions and all your queries. So till we meet again another time, I am your tutor, Mr. Campbell. Thank you all.